If there's anything better than a bowl of ice cream, it has to be a crunchy cone full of the frozen dairy delight. But believe it or not, that cone that seems custom-made for its creamy counterpart was just a fluke. Really, just a big accident, created by searing heat, a Syrian savior, and a summer snafu.
The ice cream cone seems so inevitable, so perfectly designed for its purpose, that it's hard to believe that a world existed where the cone didn't exist with the ice cream.
But for most of human history, that world was reality. People had been eating frozen desserts for centuries. For the record, ice cream's origins trace back to ancient Persia, around 550 BC, where early frozen desserts were made by mixing snow with fruit juices. But that's another story. This is the American curiosity story of the ice cream cone. It's a curious story that includes a World's Fair, a heat wave, an ice cream dish shortage, and a Syrian immigrant with a gift for quick thinking. Now, before you say, how hard could it have been? Give me a moment to explain a story that's messier than a double scoop on a sun-drenched sidewalk. Take your mind back more than a century. St. Louis, Missouri, 1904. It's the Louisiana Purchase Exposition, a celebration of the massive expansion of our great nation, better known as the St. Louis World's Fair. It's one of the biggest events in American history. Tens of thousands of people flood through the gates every single day, sweating through their Sunday best in the Missouri summer heat. And what do hot, tired, excited fairgoers want more than anything? Ice cream. And ice cream vendors are everywhere at this fair, but they are absolutely slammed. We're talking lines stretching down the midway, scoops flying into the small glass or metal dishes the treat was typically served in at the time. Well, at this fair, those dishes were disappearing faster than they could be washed and returned. This was a logistical crisis happening in real time, one melting scoop at a time. Keep in mind, in 1904, ice cream wasn't just a trip to the freezer section, it was a luxury item. Before mechanical refrigeration became widespread, ice cream required actual harvested ice, cut from frozen lakes in the winter, packed in sawdust, and stored in ice houses just to survive the summer. It was labor-intensive, expensive, and often reserved for the wealthy or for very special occasions. By the turn of the 20th century, ice cream parlors were popping up for the middle class, but it was still very much a sit-down experience. The idea of eating ice cream out of a dish while walking around hadn't really occurred to anyone yet, because until the cone came along, there was nothing really portable to put it in. So what's about to happen at the World's Fair is going to change a lot about how we look at ice cream. You see, right next to one particularly overwhelmed ice cream vendor sits a man named Ernest Hamwi. He's a Syrian immigrant, and he's got his own booth at the fair selling zalabia, a traditional Middle Eastern pastry. Thin, crispy, hot from the fryer, lightly sweetened, with a texture similar to what we'd call a waffle today. It's a warm, tasty treat, but on a hot summer day, it's not exactly flying off the shelves. Much like ice cream, zalabia had been a beloved street food and celebratory treat for hundreds of years. It's a simple batter, deep-fried until golden crisp, then drizzled with syrup or honey, light, delicate, and when it's fresh out of the fryer, it's pliable enough to be shaped any way you'd like before it cools and hardens into something rigid and crunchy. Do you see where I'm going with this? Ernest Hamwi knew this pastry inside and out. He'd grown up with it. That intimate knowledge of his own food, how it behaved, bent, and crisped, is exactly what made him the right person in the right place at the right moment. His cultural heritage didn't just contribute a flavor to the story, it sort of makes the story.
So here we have two vendors side by side, one with too much product and one with not enough dishes to serve his product. It's a magical moment.
The ice cream vendor runs out of dishes completely. There's a line of customers. His ice cream is melting and customers are melting down. With nothing to put the ice cream in, Ernest Hamwi thinks fast, grabs one of his pastries, shapes it into a cone, hands it to his neighbor, and voila! The two treats suddenly come together like cookies and milk. An American story in a still mostly French Creole city that brings two centuries-old foods from the other side of the planet together. The ice cream cone isn't so much a food invention as it is a cultural handshake, right there on the midway of the St. Louis World's Fair. Suddenly, customers are scooped up in the excitement and walking away with ice cream in an edible dish they don't need to return. They can walk the expo midway with so much to see in 1904. Curious new inventions included the X-ray machine, the baby incubator, the fax machine, the radio phone. Electricity was everywhere: stoves, coffee makers, dishwashers. But right there on the fairgrounds, the fantastical new ice cream cone was invented before their eyes. Word spread fast. By the end of the fair, cone vendors are everywhere. Within just a few years of 1904, entrepreneurs are filing patents, manufacturing companies are being built, and cone-making machines are rolling out across the country. The ice cream cone goes from a spontaneous, desperate fix at a single vendor booth to a national phenomenon that melts America's hearts. By the mid-20th century, it's estimated that Americans were consuming billions of ice cream cones per year. Billions. From one rolled-up waffle pastry in good old St. Louis. The industrial scale of what followed is staggering. By 1910, there were already dedicated cone baking companies operating across the United States. In 1912, just 8 years after the World's Fair, a man named Frederick Bruckman invented the first automatic cone rolling machine, which could produce cones far faster than any human could hand roll them. Then came the sugar cone, the waffle cone, the flat-bottomed cake cone. Each variation was its own small innovation, its own tiny chapter in the cone's evolution. By the 1920s, ice cream manufacturers and cone producers had essentially built an entirely new industry together. A supply chain, a distribution network, a product ecosystem, all anchored to that single improvised pastry roll. The legend of Ernest Hamwi lives on, but as you can imagine, Hamwi isn't the only person who takes credit for inventing the ice cream cone. In fact, there were at least a half dozen people who put their hand up after the fair and said, "No, it was me." Food historians have been debating this for decades, and Ernest Hamwi usually gets the credit. Reality or legend, the story has a hero, a crisis, and a genius solution. What we do know is this: the 1904 St. Louis World's Fair was almost certainly the moment the ice cream cone went from obscure novelty to mainstream sensation.
The cone craze exploded there, and however it happened, it wasn't some carefully engineered product developed in some food laboratory, and it didn't need $1 million marketing campaign to take off. The ice cream cone had no problem at all finding its own fame.
So the next time you're standing in line at your local ice cream shop, take a moment to think about Ernest Hamwi and American curiosity. If you enjoyed this one, don't be shy. Hit that subscribe button, drop a comment, and if you have a moment, enjoy another episode of American Curiosity right now.